Everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Robbie Crager, the Flip Flop Flipper. Today I'm here with my good friend Daven Michaels, and we're going to talk about the San Juan Social Club, the cruise that we just went on, outsourcing, and a whole bunch of different things, guys. Buckle up, get ready for this. Daven, thanks so much for coming in and sitting with us today. My goodness, the world gives you what you ask for.
Right,
and
absolutely.
I was just telling you this. Recently, I started to think about outsourcing.
Yeah.
And I've always been against it. I'm a bit of a control freak.
Sure, it's common.
And
Micromanager.
We've known each other for a year or so.
Yeah, maybe a couple of years even.
And so in anticipation of you coming in, I sort of Googled you.
Check me out.
Looked at you and realized this is just the world delivering what you asked for.
Guy.
You speak it into existence, and the outsourcing, what a great time that you would come around. So we're highly interested in this. I'm trying to figure out how we can do more as a team, but kind of figure out what can be pushed out to other people.
Yeah, totally. Well, thanks for having me, Robbie. And I just love what you're doing. It's awesome. So I love it. I love it. From the fact that you're an info marketer and helping people out and sharing your wisdom, and then leveraging that and doing what you're doing for the island and with the island. So super awesome, super awesome. So yes, for the last decade plus, I built a company called 123 Employee, the premier outsourcing centers in the Philippines. We had 1,000 employees. There was a big merger last year. We're now part of a conglomerate with 6,000 employees. So for the last decade and a half, I've been the outsourcing guy. I've spoken all over the world on outsourcing. I've written books on outsourcing. And it's interesting. When we first got into the space, we were super early. We were literally the first company in the space. I always say you can always tell who the pioneers are because they're the ones with the arrows in their back, right? And that was us. We had no market. People needed or entrepreneurs needed outsourcing. We weren't the first people in space, but we were the first for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs needed outsourcing, but they didn't want outsourcing because they didn't know it existed for them.
Or like me, they have a control problem.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but they didn't even know it existed. This was so long ago. And so I realized early on that if we wanted to have a market, we'd have to carve out one for us. And so we kind of sat down, hunkered down. How can we create a market? We decided to adopt an info marketing model like what you do. I started writing books. We started creating info products. I started speaking on stages all over the world. We started doing our events globally, Australia, US, Asia, New Zealand. And we began educating our prospects and turning them into our clients, just like you're educating your people, and some of those people turn into potential partners, right?
Right.
And it's awesome. But we did this so early on, in such a long time ago, and we started doing that. But we had several tipping points in our business. One was when Tim Ferriss's book came out, right? The 4-Hour Workweek. That was a game changer. When I got my VP Bijal, that was a big tipping point in our business. But probably the first tipping point was we were very early on, we were embraced by the real estate investment community in the States. And they were our springboard early on. I would speak at their events. I would go to all the RIAs. They would have me, on their webinars and trainings and this and that. And they would even include us in their info products. And so that was how we got started. So there are a trillion things that you actually can outsource, but I'll just give you some ideas, okay? So one thing is if you have rental units, you can do a lot of the property management. That can be outsourced. Everything from turning the utilities on and off to screening rental applications to following up on repairs and then booking the maintenance people to go out and do all that stuff. And I literally have this massive laundry list. So you can do that. They can be involved in the prospecting process. So you've got your signs out, they're calling in, they want to get info on properties, they can send all that stuff out and so on and so forth. They can coordinate your construction teams. The list goes on and on and on. There's a lot that your VA can do. They don't have to be here in Puerto Rico. They can be in the Philippines, or there's a company that we're working with right now that's in Lebanon, believe it or not, and they're great. They have like no accents because they're in Lebanon, which is awesome. So it can be done. So the question is, how does a micromanager, control freak do this, right? Well, first of all, you definitely have to relinquish some control. Okay, that's for sure. You have to almost dismiss the idea, at least initially, of perfection and know that there's going to be mistakes, right? Because they're not you, right? And it's going to require a knowledge dump. And knowledge dumps take time. They don't happen overnight. You've been an investor 25 years, right?
That's right.
Right, exactly. So you want to get them to be 10% as good as you. Well, that's 10% of that's 2.5 years, right? So now I think you can do that a lot quicker because they're not going to be high level like you. They're going to be more of a task executor rather than a strategist. And I think that's really the focus. Like so many people hire a VA and go, hey, you're going to do everything for me. And they expect them to be the chief strategist in their business. And that's not the case. They're task executors. So there are definitely some best practices. And by the way, I'll give you an example. So I had my assistant, LJ, she was with me for 15 years. Okay. As a matter of fact, I had a profit sharing plan for all of our management, knowing that if we would get to where we wanted to go, it would make our management rich. And then we passed that. And so I made her a millionaire in the Philippines, which was very cool. I made many of our managers millionaires. It was great because you can make a big impact in a third world country like the Philippines. If you pay some incentives, maybe an extra 100 a month, 150, that's a lot of money in the Philippines. It goes a long way. And so you can really make a big impact. So LJ was with me for 15 years. And I say was because recently I lost her.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So when I met LJ, I think people will find this interesting. When I met LJ, chewing gum was a luxury. Literally a luxury. Would you like a piece of gum? Wow. Today, LJ has, 3 cars, 6 Apple products. She supports all of her extended family, just bought a house, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, but she left me recently. Crazy, right?
Right.
I mean, she had the golden handcuffs, but the reality is not everyone's motivated by money, or they are for a long time, and then other things motivate them, right? I always think everyone's motivated by money because I know I'm motivated by money. I think you are, but that's not the case for everyone. But anyways, when I lost her, it was like losing my mind.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean? And we're still great friends, but it's been devastating. Luckily, Liz has taken over recently, which has been helpful, right?
Yep.
And that's an example of a local and a non-local assistant. And we can break all that down too. But anyways, so LJ became a trusted ally in my business. Honestly, I could barely function without her. Okay, that's how great she became. She was not only a strategist, she would have amazing ideas that I didn't have, but she would kind of run my business on the personal side. It was unbelievable. She was with me for 15 years, right? This stuff takes time. So I'll give you some best practices and some ideas for the audience, right? So first thing is you just want to start by figuring out what it is you're going to outsource. So if you talk to the outsourcing gurus out there, they will say to outsource all the busy stuff in your business, right? All the minutia that's taking up your time that, your time could be better spent elsewhere, right? I disagree with that. I have a different strategy. So I say you want to focus on the money-making tasks. So I'm sure you would agree there's about 1 million things you could do every day in your business, right?
There is a list that never ends.
That never ends.
Yeah.
But there's only a small handful of stuff that creates bottom line results, right? When you're buying and selling properties and you're rehabbing them and then you're reselling them, those equal bottom line dollars.
That's great.
Right. Everything else gets you busy. So I always say you make a list. Take a piece of paper, put a list down both sides, or today we use computers, whatever. Do it however you want to do it. On the right-hand side, put your IGAs, the income generating activities. These are the things that create bottom line results. These are going to be your focus first. Why? Because even though you're saving a lot of money with an assistant, an overseas assistant, you might pay $6, $7, $8 an hour. It's not a lot of money, but it's still a liability on your balance sheet, right?
Yep.
So let's get that employee paid for right away, right? So make a list of those. And then circle all the things that you believe could be outsourced or delegated to somebody else on that list, okay? Which should be, hopefully it's 60%. Then really think about it for a minute and say, you know what, if I had a month to really do a knowledge dump on these people, what else could I outsource? Circle those as well. Then start working through those. Start working with your employee to get that up and running with your virtual assistant or even local assistant, same process. Once you tackle those, on the left-hand side, everything else, the minutia, all the things that are taking up your valuable time because your time can be better spent, on making money, right? And then you approach it that way. So then the next question is, so now you've got the list, how do you train them, right? So a couple of options. You can have an outsourced assistant somebody in another country, or you can have somebody local that you work with here in Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. You probably will pay a little more here, but, as you know, somebody kind of shadowing you can be quite valuable. And it'd be faster. And rather than you taking all this time to train, you could just do, and they could learn while you're doing, right? So you're not taking time out of your money-making schedule. So there are a lot of pros to having somebody local. I'll give you an example. So I had LJ. She was in the Philippines. I, spent months training her in the early days, and it was in bursts, right? I would train her, and then I'd get busy, train her, get busy, train her, get busy, and I'd mirror a lot of things. So first thing I do is straight off the bat, one of the things, like so much of what we do is in communication, right? It's in emails and texts, right? So how do I approach that? So first thing I did was I created my private email, right? So the private email was the email that I only gave out to my team. And you really have to protect that email. You give it to one wrong person, and then you're fucked. You got to get a new email, right? So that private email only goes to team. Then you have the public email. And that public email, LJ was copied in that. So I would respond to the emails. Quite often I'd record screen capture videos as I'm sitting there doing my emails that I would do normally anyway. So it hasn't taken out a moment of my time. I'm just speaking my emails while I'm doing it and recording the videos. So then I'd send her the videos. Then she would start responding to those emails. She's getting copied on them as well. If there was something that she couldn't answer, she'd move it to a folder. Then I would go to that folder, let's say end of day or next day or what have you, and I'd start answering those emails, record a video, shoot it back to her. So now she was learning, right? So that was email. Next is text. Okay, this one's great. So for text, I don't know about you, but for me, like WhatsApp and text is now 90% of my communication.
Text is my preferred way to communicate.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'd say now I'm down to like 10% email. So let's talk about text and WhatsApp. So there are a myriad of different options, but ideally you need to copy them in, right? So most people use Apple Messenger, right? For an assistant option, I don't recommend this one because you'd have to copy them into your iCloud account. And now you're giving them a lot of control, potentially, a lot of access. And believe me, my employees are trusted confidants, my assistants, so I do give them a lot of access. They have my credit cards, which I don't worry about because there's very little liability for a lost credit card, right? I use LastPass for passwords. LastPass allows you to share passwords, but you can share them encrypted. So your employees can access your accounts, but they don't know the password.
They don't know the password.
Exactly.
Wow.
And if you lose them, you can hit one button and lock them out of everything.
Very interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So that's LastPass. LastPass had a breach a couple years ago, a hack. A lot of people lost faith in LastPass, but they're okay. They obviously fixed that.
They righted the ship.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, but the big one is text. So I wouldn't give them iCloud access. So how do I do it? So I'm an iPhone user, as so many people are, right? But I also have Google Voice on here. Now I have to say, Google Voice over the years, they haven't kept up, and so it's an inferior technology, unfortunately. But it does the trick. It works fine. And so what I do is I set up Google Voice on like LJ's computer, and so now she's answering my texts as me. And it's so funny. Yeah. So I'll go to lunch with people and I'll hold up my phone and go, check it. And they can see boom, 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 messages back and forth. All my friends don't know whether they're really talking to me or not.
That's,
okay.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
That's pretty ninja, right?
Yeah, that's ninja for sure.
So as you know, and we'll talk more about it probably in a few minutes, years ago I created something called the San Juan Social Club here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you notice I'm very active with you in WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Well, that's not always me. Okay. And matter of fact, more often than not, it isn't me. But we have a system in place so that it's not me until such time as there's something that you and I need to talk about. So here's kind of how it works. So WhatsApp allows you to share, I think it's 4 or 5 other machines. Okay. So 2 or 3 of my staff is in WhatsApp on their computers. And what will happen is, they might be messaging you about X, Y, Z, and then you might throw a wild card at them and say, hey, Daven, are we still getting together to do that interview? And at that point, they archive the message. And then I only check archive messages. And then I respond.
Then you respond.
So essentially, we are communicating, but there's a lot of leverage there, right? So those are probably some of my pretty ninja hacks. The one thing I will tell you is that if you're going to outsource, or even if you're going to have a system, because they're very similar, most of the time when it doesn't work, not most of the time, but let's say over half of the time when it doesn't work out, it's not because you have a bad employee, it's because you're a bad boss.
Or you're not communicating well.
Yeah, you're not communicating well. You're not taking the time to show them. Think of it as you're going to have to take a step backwards to take 2 steps forward.
Right.
But if you make the investment in them, it's worth it. Now, this is an important thing is, look, let's say you do invest your time and your money and your resources, and then you lose them, right? That sucks.
Yeah.
So how do you avoid that? Well, there's some really great best practices for that. First of all, if you're going to have a virtual assistant, give them incentivized bonuses. And like I said, if they're overseas, it's not a lot of money, $100, $150 extra for doing stuff. That'll lock them in. At least for LJ was 15 years, right? That was big bonuses, but still, yeah, you'll lock them in for a lot longer. And the same thing, if you do it locally. I have to say, I'm a big advocate, as you know, of outsourcing, but also I'm a big advocate for Puerto Rico, right, and generating more jobs. And I have to say, you could get somebody here, them shadowing you would be invaluable for them, right? I mean, if somebody wants to get into real estate investing, I mean, heck, I'll be honest with you, you could have apprentices. Like I would almost go like a unpaid apprentice for a little bit, or low pay or what have you, and then they work into. I mean,
I think Adon and I did that a little bit.
Did you? I mean, dude, I would shadow you for free, right? Because I want to learn what you know, right? So, so ideally, that could be pretty cool. There's upsides to local. So, when I lost when I lost LJ, I hired a new assistant. She was in India. We tried India just for the heck of it because I have a small team in India, and she sucked. I mean, she was oh my God, it was so painful. It was horrible. And then my HR manager fired her. Like they got in a fight. She was terrible. So I was in a bind because we had the cruise coming up, which we're going to talk about too. And so I asked my former affiliate manager, who we retired, Liz, my girlfriend, to step in.
To come back.
And when years ago, Liz came to work for me, and it was awesome for a while, right? And then it wasn't, right? And so we retired her. So Liz is an artist now, and she's crushing. And so I asked her to take time out of her career and come back to work. And she said, okay. And, we have our moments because obviously, she's my girlfriend, right? But she has been amazing. So amazing. And the question is why? Well, I mean, she's a smart girl, but LJ worked way harder than Liz. Okay. I mean, I wouldn't say she was more resourceful, but she's just a harder worker, and she worked 8 hours a day and what have you, which was amazing. She, LJ worked full time. Liz is not working full time. She's, 4 to 6 hours a day, 4 hours a day, probably on average. But Liz was just as good. Why? Well, one is she knows me. She's known me for 15 years. She knows how I think. She knows how I work, which was the benefit that I had with LJ, who had been with me for 15 years. So that's
got
funny.
To know you pretty well, too.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I just realized, LJ and I were together as long as Liz and I have been together. Yeah, which is crazy. Yeah, she knows me. She knows the way I work. And what has been invaluable is proximity. There is power in proximity. Right. And so the fact that she's there, she sees what I'm doing, she can grab my phone, real quick and do what she needs to do. I can just yell across the table, hey, can you grab that? Can you take care of this? I got this, got that. So it's huge. So there you go. You could totally outsource it. For you, my recommendation, get an apprentice or a paid apprentice, because
I like the fact that you've done this in real estate, right? So this should be something that I can plug into pretty easily.
You can, and I have a presentation on it. As a matter of fact, if you remind me, I'll get it over to you. I think I can find it. Yeah, and I talk about all the stuff. And when you see the laundry list, you're going to be like, oh shit, I can't believe that.
And for me, I have partners, right, that want to pull back and do less. Right. One of my partners is in charge of the books and tracks everything, and he's amazing. And so thinking about how to outsource that and the amount of time that he has to invest in it, I have some convincing to do. But that's where he wants to go as well. So I think that this is just going to be amazing.
Sure. Well, let me give you 3 options for that bookkeeping. Okay. Yeah. All right. Option 1, you can outsource anywhere. I have a great bookkeeper that I can connect you with. She's great. She's
Okay.
super knowledgeable. She's not terribly expensive, and she's in the States. So that's option one. Probably should do that one. But I'll share some other options for those of you out there as well. So that's option one. Option two, there are what's called KPO firms. So KPO firms, so my business is BPO, business process outsourcing, which is basically back office and customer service.
Yep.
KPO is knowledge process outsourcing, specialized stuff, paralegal, bookkeeping, CPA, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find these KPO firms. KPOs tend to be a little more prevalent in like India.
Okay.
They'll charge you more, but they can do the stuff as well. And then third, here's another cool hack too. And I'll just tell you guys like a little case study so you get it. So one of my dear friends, one of my best friends, Tim, has had his employee with me, Lido, for gosh, I don't know, a decade probably. And Tim is in the computer repair business. And so Tim would basically go out to sites and fix people's networks and computers and stuff. And so he had a totally linear business. So it was all about, the more time he could spend at sites,
On-site.
the more money he'd make. And this is kind of, real estate is a leveraged business, but because of what you do, the more deals you're doing, the more money you're making, right? So for Tim, it was linear. So he just needed more time. It was all about just buying him more time. So he had his assistant, Lido. So he told me that, Tim told me that he was doing the QuickBooks, the bookkeeping, and again, that took away from revenue generating activities. So he said, well, could I get Lido to do this? Or no, he came to me and said, do you have people who can do bookkeeping? I said, you know what? We do, but you're going to have to pay a premium. I said, why don't we do this? I said, QuickBooks is easy, and there are tutorial videos already. And why don't you record some screen capture videos of where you book to what and why and who and what have you, the details, and then give it all to Lido and let's see if Lido can do it. So he did. Lido totally figured it out. So now when Tim goes to a site, as he's walking out the door, he texts Lido, 6 hours, client XYZ. Lido bills him, handles the collection, and does all the bookkeeping.
Amazing.
So again, it just goes to investing a little time in your VA. But again, I'll connect you with somebody that I think is your person.
I can't wait.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
great.
Yeah, so those kind of things are easier to outsource. It's the more strategic stuff, like the stuff you do, that is harder, right? Because it's specialized. But again, if you have somebody mirror you, they'll figure it
that's
out.
the idea for this YouTube channel. That's the idea that I've done with the Don and with others, where we invest in some people and teach them what we do so that they can help us to do more deals, right?
Yeah, exactly. They become your bird dogs, right?
Yeah.
Or the leverage in your business. It's this info marketing model is such a win-win, right? Because you are giving away your best stuff, great information for free, and then some these people are absorbing it. Most people will do nothing because most people in life do nothing.
Unfortunately,
right?
yeah.
But more and more people are doing now because they have access to so much more,
Yep.
and then some people will actually take your information and go run with it, which it'll change their lives and the lives of so many people.
Yeah.
There's a ripple effect. Right? It'll create jobs and money.
We talk about that a lot on this channel.
Do ya?
The action of doing stuff just lifts everybody up, right? It's such a great thing to be successful and then have your influenced people in your life, your friends, your family, also get encouraged and realize, well, he did it. I can do it.
Totally. You have no idea the impact that every move you make in your life makes, right? The littlest things create this ripple in the universe that changes everything.
Yeah.
And we don't even realize it, right? But once in a while, you find out somebody comes up, like, here's one example. I've got a bunch of these, and I love these stories. But one example, we did events for about a decade, and there was later we did another event, and this woman came up to us and said, I was basically homeless with my kid when I came to your last event, and you shared this idea, and I created a business, and I'm doing well now, and
Wow.
we have a great house, and things are going well. It's just like when you hear that stuff, it's just you don't even know.
Yeah.
You have
Right.
no clue. It's pretty
That's
awesome.
amazing. We
Pretty
spoke with
awesome.
someone yesterday who had invested over $500,000 in personal growth and everything. And my question was, well, is it worth it? And he's like, yeah, it's been completely worth it.
Yeah.
And he's an action guy, right?
Yeah.
Like he definitely spent that money, invested in himself, and then took action and did it. And to your point, a lot of people will invest. I don't know if anybody invests $500,000 and doesn't take action. That would be a bit extreme. But that first $5,000, you get 2% of the people that probably take action.
Yeah.
So it's super important to just start doing stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of knowledge out there, right? Like, it's such a different world now Like now, all knowledge, like the world has been leveled.
It's at your fingertips.
Yes, everybody has access to all the knowledge of the world with like a supercomputer, and it's all in their pocket, right? But what is knowledge without action? It's just knowledge, right? But now you have all this stuff. There's really like no excuse. I mean, there's a couple of excuses. Maybe you're working your tail off and this and that, but there's not a lot of excuses for like inactivity now, right?
One of the most inspiring things that I saw about you last night as I was researching you built yourself into a worldwide worldwide speaker using 3 VAs in 3 different time zones. I was like, this is freaking brilliant.
That's cool. I didn't even know that content was still online.
Doing it together with them, and it sounded like, and tell me if I'm wrong, after a short period of time, you're speaking all over, and your VAs just took over and were getting you gigs because they learned by watching.
Should we share the strategy?
I would love to.
Yeah, okay.
I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, so I have to say, one of the most enjoyable things in my life that has given me just so much gratitude and joy is speaking. So I speak all over the world. I've been speaking for about a decade plus, and it changed my life. I absolutely love it. I'm an entertainer. I can't come out of the music business, so the fact that I get to entertain on stage, I love it. And speaking has taken me to 51 countries. I've been paid to speak in 51 countries all over the globe. And when I say paid, public speaking is the highest paid profession there is, if you're a selling speaker, which is what I am. So there's keynoters. They might get paid 10, 20, 30, or maybe 50 to 100 or a couple $100 grand if you're a celeb. But selling speakers, we get paid a lot. So I'll put it in perspective. So I was on tour with Gary Vee in Australia, Gary Vaynerchuk, and those were rooms of about 1,500. I would sell a product for $2K. I would sell 20% of the room. So what is that, 600 grand? I think that's 600 grand in 90 minutes. Jeez. That's not bad, right? Now,
it's not a bad hourly rate.
Not at all. Now those, I don't have those gigs all the time. Sometimes, it's 100 people in the room or a couple hundred, but it's great. Now here's the thing though, I would do it for free because I love it. I love people. I love the impact. I love to entertain. I love helping people, and I love traveling. And my greatest thing is hanging out with guys like you and just exchanging information. I'm sure you love it too. We're those kind of guys, right? And so I would do it for free. But anyways, in the early days, I wanted to be an international speaker. So I first started in the U.S. I kind of fell on my ass a few times, and then that was the beginning of me seeking knowledge and getting some speaker training, and then I got really good. I remember I spoke at this one gig where I crashed and burned, but I remember seeing all these celebs, these speaking celebs, thinking, gosh, if I could only be 10% as great as those guys, I'd be happy. Today I can outsell all those guys. I'm in the top 10. And that was just because I invested in my craft and I was passionate about it, and I did the time, right? I did the hours. But in the early days, I knew what I wanted and I wasn't there. I knew that I wanted to speak globally because in the States it's great, but if you can speak on the international stages, Australia and Europe and Asia, those are much bigger stages, thousands of people instead of hundreds of people, and higher ticket. The Brits are just used to paying double what we pay here, so we just double the price. So say we double the price there, we double the price in Australia, Asia, most of Asia, and so it's just big money, and I wanted to see the world. So I was like, how am I going to do this? So I put together a list of the type of events that I wanted to speak at. These were like internet marketing, social media, entrepreneur stages, et cetera, made a list. And then parameters like where, size of stages, what areas, et cetera. Then I had 3 virtual assistants. We were data mining the information, that's scraping the data off of Google. And then I had them in 3 different time zones. And so they were reaching out to the different parts of the world, and it would go like this. They would reach out to the promoter. So promoters of events, the biggest challenge they always have, do you know what the biggest challenge always is?
Getting people to show up.
Getting butts in seats, absolutely. In the UK, they call it bums in seats, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest challenge. So I was like, well, how can I help? I was not an accomplished speaker yet. I was not a New York Times bestselling author yet. But I had a list. I had a tribe, a small list. And so I'd reach out. So they would reach out, and they would say, hey, I work with Daven Michaels. He has a big following, and he can help get butts in seats. And we'd like to reach out and see if we can, explore some synergies between us. The promoter would say yes, and then they'd schedule a call. It would show up on my Google Calendar, and then we would jump on it wasn't Zoom at the time. There wasn't Zoom
like
yet.
a Skype or something.
We were on like GoToWebinar, I think, yeah. And it would be myself, my U.S. assistant Kristen, and the promoter, and then I would share with how I could add value, and then we would make a deal. And then what would happen is after about 10, 20 of those calls, Kristen knew what the deal was, and so then I just stopped showing up. And then later LJ took over, and they would just jump on the call and say, you know what, I'm so sorry, because they had a call with me scheduled. They'd say, I'm so sorry, Daven just jumped on a call. It looks like it's going to go over. And they'd be like, oh, we could do it another time. Oh, that's okay. Let's just jump into it. And I was traveling all over the world speaking. And that's how I launched my speaking career. And it's been the greatest thing in my life, actually.
That's really, that's an inspiring story. As a guy, I've got a small YouTube channel, we're speaking. When I first started, I can remember having discussions with the Don where it's like, what am I going to say? I don't know what I'm going to say.
But then it just comes out, right?
What the hell am I going to talk about, right?
Yeah.
And now we're a couple hundred videos in, and I can't shut up.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
But
you're a content-making machine.
I admire how you kind of decided that you're going to do this and spoke it into existence, came up with a plan and did it.
Yeah, and when you zoom out, it looks awesome. I mean, zoom back in, there were certainly, trials and tribulations and roadblocks and stumbling blocks. But yeah, it was so great. I honestly, I sometimes I get a little choked up because I'm so grateful for just everything that has come from speaking. You know, it's been great. It's been really great.
Well, I mean, definitely inspired me. I was already doing this, but I want to speak around the world.
It's fun.
Maybe you can introduce me to some people.
I can, yeah. And you know what else is a cool hack? I have a buddy of mine. He speaks on cruise ships a lot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And actually, that's a great segue.
To talk about
San
Juan Social Club.
And
so
let's start with sort of the origins of this whole thing. So I moved to Puerto Rico, I think right around the same time you moved here.
I think you were a month before me.
Yeah, I was a month before you. So February, I think, 2018.
Yeah, and I was March.
Right. Okay. So we came, it was just 5 months after Hurricane Maria. Things were a lot different back then. And it was a different island back then. But I did have, on day 2, I had the idea for the San Juan Social Club cruise, or let's say a group cruise, but the timing was wrong. So anyways, I like cigars, and so a friend of mine and I, we just started like a little cigar club in Palmas, which is where I bought my first place, Palmas Del Mar. And it was just after Hurricane Maria. Back then, 80% of the community wasn't even there because it's people's second and third homes in Palmas. And so we'd have 5 people show up to our monthly cigar parties. And then Liz had this idea, hey, why don't you invite the girls? And I was like, I'm hanging with my boys. I'm like, but what the hell, let's do it. So we invited the girls, and then we'd have like 10 or 15 people show, and we'd do it at people's houses. Over time, I kind of stripped out the cigar thing. Sometimes we have cigars, sometimes we don't. I wanted to make it broader, make it for everybody. And I rebranded it, and I turned it into the San Juan Social Club. And the idea behind the San Juan Social Club is I literally wanted to take, guys like me or you who were Act 2022ers or Act 6ers, call us transplants or New Ricans, right? Mm-hmm. And I want to put them together with Puerto Ricans for food, for drinks, for great conversation. And it's a very unsophisticated model with a very sophisticated purpose. And the idea was this. If you say, hey, let's go grab a drink or let's have some food, there's no friction. Nobody says, I don't eat.
Right.
I don't drink. Like, well, maybe they don't drink, but you know what I mean? They don't eat. Like, everybody eats. So there's no friction there. And from there, anything is possible. And I wanted to bring us all together. And that was the intention. And since then, 6 years later, we have over 1,600 people in the San Juan Social Club.
Wow.
And it started off probably like it started off 95%, Act 2022ers. But that wasn't my intention. It was to bring everyone together. And now it's getting very close to 50-50.
Right.
It's, I'd say it's probably 60% Act 6ers and 40% locals, and it's closing in quickly. And it's been great. So we do events once a month at curated locations across the island. I do it as a public service. It's free, just to bring people together, and that's it. No other intention. Some of the events are learning events, which have been really cool. They're all social, though, no matter what, whether it's a learning event or not, it's social. And some of the events are philanthropy as well, and because we do have a social mission as well. And so they're free events. But I knew I wanted to do a group cruise. So I don't know, 6-7 months ago, we announced the first annual San Juan Social Club cruise, which you were on. And this obviously is not free because it's a cruise. It's on Virgin. And the idea behind the cruise is it's for people who live in Puerto Rico and people that are interested in Puerto Rico that want to network, make friends, and learn about all of Puerto Rico's amazing resources and opportunities. And I put those resources and opportunities in 3 buckets. 1, governmental, which is all of the tax incentives and services around that. 2 is services that guys and gals like us would be interested in here on the island. And then lastly, all the cool stuff that guys like you and I are doing on the island. These could be like investment opportunities or real estate projects or what have you. And so on the cruise, we're really there just to have a blast. It's all fun, primarily. But we do have masterminds at sea. They're normally a couple hours. So we have some world-class speakers. We have meetups. We have excursions. We have meals together. And we happen to be on Virgin, which is the hottest, coolest cruise line on the ocean, right?
It's the best food so I've been on some cruises, and food is usually okay, but this food was really good.
Really good. It's totally different. So if you've been on a cruise before, and a lot of our cruisers were new cruisers, but if you've been on a cruise before, normally there's kids. There's no kids on Virgin. Normally you wake up in the morning, good morning, this is your cruise director, da-da-da. Nothing. Normally you have a dining room. No dining room. They're all specialty restaurants. Normally those restaurants are upsold. They're all included. Your drinks are kind of included too because you get a big bar tab.
You get a big bar tab. I had a hard time spending the bar tab because I don't drink.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
We spent it all.
I drink a little bit.
I bought people drinks.
Yeah, that's super awesome. So that was one thing. And then we also get some sailor loot, which you can use for anything on this ship, including a tattoo because they have a tattoo parlor.
Did anyone get the tattoo?
So on day 1, I said, hey, I said the first person to tattoo San Juan Social Club on them, I will give them a free cruise next year. So a lot of people wanted to do it. A buddy of mine, Tim Johnson, who buys all my stuff. He's just a big fan. He came to my mastermind a decade ago, and I changed his life basically. So he buys anything that I give him now, and he's a great guy, and he's become a dear friend. And Tim came up to me day 1. He said, I'll do the tattoo. Just tell me what you want. and then I discourage it because I know he buys anything I sell. So it's like, I don't want to give away a free cruise when I know Tim's going to buy it anyway. So so nobody did it, but plenty of people wanted to do it. I just didn't push it. But anyways, so I announced the cruise. I think some people caught my vision. I think people didn't really know what it was going to be, but they thought it was interesting or what have you. But I had a very clear picture in my mind of exactly what it was going to be. And then I spent the last half a year or what have you, more than half a year, 3/4 of a year worrying about it, right? Is it going to turn out right? And it turned out amazing, right?
Oh, it was amazing.
I'm so over the moon. I'm so happy. And it was so successful that when we got off the boat, 75% of the people had already re-upped for next year.
Yep.
And now we're at 80%. We have 200 people that have booked over the last week to be on the cruise.
Yep.
And if you're watching this, come with us. And it's super easy. You just pay a deposit now of under $300 per person, double occupancy. And then we take the rest out the rest of the year. We even have a program where if you refer a few people, a small group of people, we'll pay for your cruise. But I would tell you, people had a blast, and we're tabulating now, but we transacted over $100 million in business. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty serious stuff. And I think the reason, as a matter of fact, I know the reason for that, which is kind of neat, is that 75% are people from Puerto Rico, guys like you and I and local Puerto Ricans who grew up here. And the other 25% are kind of all my friends from all over the world because I have a global friend base all over the globe from speaking. And these are all movers and shakers doing cool stuff. So what happened was we had people from all over the world that were really interested in Puerto Rico, and as soon as they met the people and learned more, they got really inspired. And then our people in Puerto Rico got really interested in all the interesting stuff that these people are doing all over the globe. And that's how, I had one guy, he came, he got super inspired. He went back to his financiers in the UK and said, I think we should invest in Puerto Rico. And $100 million, later, right? Yeah, so
that's no small investment.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's just been so cool. I'm so psyched about it, and I really want this over time to grow into one of the premier ways to learn and get more involved in what's going on in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And some of the stories were just so cool. I'll just share just one. So, one of our sponsors And by the way, too, we gave all the ticket sale profits to charity. So we raised $41,000 for Vimenti Boys and Girls Club. Our goal is $250,000, which will be 100,000 meals for them. And I think we'll hit it because we're going to do a big challenge and get people to match that. But yeah, I just had one person, one of our sponsors. She is an astute real estate investor. You met her husband, Tim. So it's Tim and Carmen.
Okay.
Yeah, and so they have hundreds of properties. And they had come to Puerto Rico. They bought a property in Rincon. They built a very cool boutique hotel. Very cool. Rincon, though, as you all know, is an amazing place, but it's all the way over there.
It's right? A bit of ways.
Yeah. So if you live there, you probably like being in your tight little community. Like you know, I don't know, you may not be an extrovert even. Who knows, right? It's a little area. And so Carmen had been, building this, growing this, and so on and so forth. They also have a place in Miami. They have a life in Miami as well. And they were kind of like, they had one foot in Puerto Rico and one foot in Miami. And Carmen was feeling very isolated. And they had accomplished their hotel, but she was kind of like, I'm feeling kind of lonely and isolated. And, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to actually make Puerto Rico my actual home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, they had made it their home, but they're...
And she's Puerto Rican.
And she's Puerto Rican, yes, exactly. And she came on the cruise and she said, you know what, now I feel like I have hundreds of friends and we're gonna go all in on Puerto Rico and get out of Miami.
We got to have dinner with them. They were one of the people that we connected with, and hopefully we'll continue to be close with them.
Totally.
Right? Like that.
Yeah, I mean,
that was what it was all about for us.
Yeah, everybody made all these great friends. Last night there was a charity event for Integro. Everyone in the room was from the San Juan Social Club cruise.
Amazing.
It was bitchin', and I just want that to grow and just help be a part of making Puerto Rico great. I mean, I think you would agree with me. I know Puerto Rico has been through some incredible times and then some turbulent times, but I feel like Puerto Rico's best days are yet to come.
I think no question about it.
Yeah.
And having moved here at the same time that you did, to see what's happened on the island. I mean, when I showed up, the lights were still out.
The lights were still out. Walmart was in a tent. I mean, it was a totally different time. Yeah.
It's gotten a lot better.
Oh,
one of the things that I loved about the cruise was these mastermind sessions that you spoke about. And it's another instance where something that I'm thinking about gets delivered to me by the world. I start to talk about masterminds on this channel, and then you're like, again, the guru of masterminds. Do you mind if we talk about the mastermind section? And we did these breakout masterminds, but I think you are really have been involved in some ongoing long-term masterminds, and it's been completely powerful for people all over the world, really.
Yeah, totally. I love talking about masterminds, and I want to kind of explain this and make some distinctions. So you may not know what a mastermind is. So masterminds are small groups of like-minded people that get together because there's more power in a group, right? You take, 10 minds, you put them together, and you get a collective 100 mind, value. And there's free masterminds and paid masterminds. For the last decade, I've had a paid mastermind that I recently retired, but I'm getting ready to bring it back, I think.
Yeah.
And I just needed a break, but I love it. I love masterminding. So on the cruise, we had what we called our mastermind sessions. The reality is this was actually speaker speaking to the audience. So these were like our events. They were a couple hours long. We did 3 or 4 of them, 4 of them on the ship and also just before we got on. We called it our mastermind session. But that's not a true mastermind, but there was great content there. But then we also had meetups.
Yeah, I was going to say you had the speakers, but then you would have breakouts after.
Exactly, and those are the meetups. And when you think about it, that's probably almost more of like a mastermind, right? Like a mini mastermind. I'll tell you how those came to fruition. So it's kind of interesting. So, and I'll share a really great strategy with you all. I think you'll actually glean a lot from this too. So I use WhatsApp as it's a major part of my business. It's a major part of the San Juan Social Club and the cruise and what have you. That's how I communicate with most of our people, right? And I presume that's probably a way that you communicate with your community too. I'm thinking.
I think we should do more, but I'm in so many WhatsApp chats communicating with the RIA group or this or that. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And so this was interesting. So on day 1 of the cruise, it was our first dinner, and I'm sitting at a table with about, 14, 15 of my friends, and my phone is blowing up. Questions. And I realize this is not going to be a vacation for me.
You've got to be able to turn that off.
Yeah, and I was like, shit. Like, I knew it was going to be work, but I was like, I want to have fun too. And I was like, shit, this sucks. And I don't know if you met Roger, who owns, you know Roger. He owns Condado Cigar Lounge.
Oh, yeah.
He and Taryn, yeah. Mm-hmm. So Roger's across the table, and he sees my face, and he texts me. He goes, are you okay? And I was like, shit. And so WhatsApp has a new community feature that has been around for about, I don't know, maybe 6 months now. And I did not turn it on because I have a really nice ecosystem right now, and I was afraid of upsetting the apple cart and screwing it up. And once you become a community, you can't take it back. So I was like, ugh. But I was like, you know what? This would be the perfect time to create a community and get the community involved here because I need help. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I was like, shit, I'm going to do it. I told Liz, I'm like, I don't know if I should or shouldn't. She's like, I don't know. I go, well, I'm doing it. So I do it. And my two co-hosts for the cruise, it's my cruise, but I have two co-hosts. There's Captain Lou and Christopher Rivera. Mm-hmm. And they saw that I did it. All of a sudden, our group becomes a community, and I'll share what the community is in a second. All of a sudden, our group becomes a community, and Christopher goes, what the fuck did he just do? And Lou goes, oh, shit, he just fucked up the whole thing. Okay?
I remember them talking about that, actually.
Yes, yes. Oh, no. And so here's what happens. So in the morning, I wake up. Well, first of all, let me explain what a community is. When you take any group that you have, you turn it into a WhatsApp community, and now that group is in the community, but you can create multiple channels. So think of it as groups within a group. So I turned on the community feature, and then I created questions, meetups, information, dinners, right, etc., which will now be fixed on the next cruise, by the way, yep. Because we have that clout now with the cruise line. And I create all these chats. And all of a sudden, I see all the questions, and then our people are answering the questions. And I go, oh my gosh, this is great. I'm going to have a vacation. At first, it didn't look like people. At first, people didn't get it. They're like, huh, what just happened? Da, da, da. But within hours, they all start joining the channels, and it worked. And I go, so it turned out to be super awesome. Okay, and so I was going to say, because your question was about the masterminds. The meetups were really the masterminds. Right. And honestly, I had this grand vision for what everything was going to be. That was not on it, okay? Yeah. That was something that I created, and it was like people started doing it, and I was like, oh, this is a great idea. It wasn't, that we made some changes on the fly, and so that turned out really nicely. But I've had masterminds, like I said, for a decade. When I first started my masterminds, we would charge $35 to $65K to work with me for a year. And that would be in a small group setting, 10, 12, 15 people. And you would come to my house 4 times a year. And we'd do a little bit of experiential, mostly just masterminding, working on each other's businesses. But the reality is, in the early days, it was really a coaching program, because if you're the guy in the front of the room 95% of the time, it's a coaching program. Right. If there's a mastermind component, people are adding their input, but really you're coaching. But you can call it a mastermind, which I did, you know, and we did that in the first few years, for several years. And then I would have called that kind of a mid-level mastermind, because I was high level. My people were looking to increase their business. Trying to rise. Yeah, exactly. So we did that for a long time, and then I decided I wanted to have a high-level mastermind. So I created mastery retreats, which was great. And the idea behind mastery retreats is I would have done it for free, because all I want to do is go from push to pull. So I have tons of joint venture partners and marketing partners from all over the world. And I was like, well, if I did a mastermind, they would all join it, and they would just come to me. I wouldn't have to go to them. Mm-hmm. And so that was the idea. I would have done it for free, but we charge $15K for that. And the question is, well, wait, if you had a mastermind that you charge $35 to $65K for, and now you have a high level one you're only charging $15, that seems kind of counterintuitive, right? Why would you charge less for more? Well, here's why. So first of all, on the $30K to $65K, we got rid of $65K really quickly. I didn't like it. At $65K, there's a high level of expectation. You have some responsibility. Absolutely. I mean, you have responsibility no matter what, but there was a high level of expectation. I want to make sure I deliver, right? I want to over-deliver always. You're an over-deliverer. I like to over-deliver, yeah. And so I got rid of 65K real quick. But anyways, we did 30K for a long time. It was super fun. When I created the high level, why did I only charge 15? Well, your high level guys, the big boys and girls, they don't think they should have to pay anything.
Right.
Right? Because they're like, hey, you're going to have me in your mastermind, right? So I made it $15K. So $15K for a year for them was no big deal. And that was easy to do. And we did those 4 times a year at my house in Vegas for years. It was super fun. And we did experiential. We would do like 3 days, and maybe like half of one of the days would be like dune buggy riding or shooting guns or stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was cool.
Or shooting guns from the dune buggy.
We never did that one, and that was cool. But you know what I came to realize, as great as that mastermind was, you met Jerry Conti, right?
Yeah,
He came out of the mastermind. You know, Dylan Bracken, he came out of the mastermind. A lot of people did. Mark Walker did. A lot of people. And, you know, it was great for them, great for me. But even though it was like great, everybody loved that mastermind, I still feel like I could have done better. And how could I have done better? Well, you will do things that will impact people's businesses, and they'll remember the impact you had on their business. They won't remember the strategies exactly that you shared with them, because eventually they'll forget and take credit for it, right? But I always tell people when they give me a great idea, that's a great idea. I will, and I'm gonna steal that from you, but I'll give you credit for it
for 3 months
until such time as I forget that it was you, and then I'll take all the credit, right? Which will happen. So people will remember. You know, they'll remember some of the ideas. They'll remember the impact that you had on their business. But what they'll really remember are the experiences, right? Whatever that is. Maybe the dinners, the things are exchanged, but even more the experiences, like when they jumped out of an airplane together or something, right? Like that they'll remember for a lifetime. And so I wished that I would have made it more experiential. Like something like instead of 10% experiential and 90% business, why not 90% experiential and 10% business? Well, what do we have on the cruise?
It was mostly experiential.
Mostly experiential, right. And so I feel like we've arrived at something really, really cool.
Yeah. I think I'll tell you one of my regrets and is we didn't plug into the group as much as we wish we had at the end of the trip. We're like,
wait a minute.
Man, we should have really gone on all the trips with the people.
Yeah.
We should have set up we did none of that, right? We just literally drove there, showed up, got our bag, and we're like,
exactly.
we're unplugged,
well,
right?
You weren't alone. Half the people did that. And we knew that. We had the room set up for half the people.
Again.
Exactly. So now what's going to happen is, now we have 80% of re-up. Now they know the drill. Guys and gals like you are going to show up, and you're going to tell the newbies, make sure you're in the sessions. Make sure you go to the meetups. Make sure you go to the meals. So it's just going to get better and better. I'm so happy about this. Yeah. It's so
that's really cool. So can I ask, so as a guy like me who's got a small channel, we've talked about this mastermind kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You've got hacks for everything.
Sure.
What's some hacks for us in this community? How could we put something together? I like the mentorship. I like doing deals with people.
Yeah.
Where I struggle is I'm not trying to sell anything to anybody, right?
Yeah.
Like I encourage people to be entrepreneurial.
Yep.
I love people to get involved with being real estate investing. Anything that I can do to give people value, I want to do. And it's naturally who I am.
Yeah.
That's why we have this YouTube channel. But we'd also like to monetize it at some point on some level.
Sure.
And I think there are some people out there that would come into a mastermind, but how do you structure it? How should I push that out to people and invite people to participate with us?
Sure. Well, I think you have to decide what you're going to charge for your mastermind. And that's an important component because that will determine who's in your mastermind, right? You could have a mastermind where you charge $2,500 a year or $1,000 a year or something like that. What does that mean? You're going to have a lot of noobs in the room, right? So it's going to be more coaching than masterminding per se, but you'll be lifting them up, right? And they'll become partners, right? Or maybe you go really high end. I don't think you want to do that, right? Because you're looking to empower new people, right? So you kind of put that pricing somewhere in the middle. True mastermind is not 100 people in the room, in my opinion. It's 10 to 20, 25 max, in my opinion. I think the goal is I'd say, you can do, monthlies and weeklies and all these things, and it's a lot easier when you're in a place like this. But I like quarterlies because they're going to be out of town for at least one, right? So you want them to get value. You want them to at least show up for a few. Also, what I like about quarterly is it gives them time to implement what you might teach them or what somebody might teach them. So that I would do that. And then I think the biggest dangling carrot you have in your mentoring or masterminding or coaching program or all of the above, however you kind of combine it, it's the two biggest assets you have. One, of course, is you, right? And your 25 years of knowledge, your success record. And two, and this is the biggest angling carrot, is the opportunity to partner with you.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was me, I would create a mastermind, and I would change your partnering program where you only partner with people that go through your mastermind. Right? And this way you get vetted deals, right? You know that people are bringing deals to you that have gone through your process, right? So you're saving your time, you're saving their time, you're saving everybody's time, and they're getting the opportunity to work with you, because that's a big opportunity. So many entrepreneurs or coaches, sell their time too short or don't even charge for their time, right? So your time is incredibly valuable, man. I mean, I don't know what you get paid, but I'm going to venture to say it's probably around $500 an hour. So I mean, that's whatever it is.
More than
that. Maybe it's $1,000 an hour. Yeah, probably is.
It's funny though. I maybe $500 an hour. But a lot of times I spend broke because I invest every penny back into this stuff.
It's probably $1,000 an hour. So your time is super valuable, and so. It's about time management and getting paid for your time. But at the same time,
outsourcing a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And then my goal is to do more by doing less, right?
Absolutely. But I would do it. I mean, you love to educate, and mentorship is awesome. Masterminding is great. Make it experiential. But the dangling carrot, the focus is around your knowledge and partnering with you.
Right.
And then I would create that barrier to entry where if they want to partner with you, they've got to be in your mastermind.
I love it.
Yeah, I like it too.
I love it.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Is this something that
It's going to be a badass mastermind, man. I'm going to join that one for sure. I want to hear about it.
Appreciate that.
But also, let's we'll share a link to the San Juan Social Club.
Yeah.
You can join our free events. It's a WhatsApp group, and then of course we'd love to have you on the
Yeah, and so on the San Juan Social Club, going back to that, we had 250 people show up, and we're going to double that. I mean, we're shooting for 500, but really, I think 1,000 would be a much better.
Well, that would be great. I think conservatively we'll hit 350, but my goal is I want to double. Yeah, that'd be great. 1,000 would be extraordinary.
Yeah, I think we can get 500 people on that cruise.
Hope so.
I know.
Let's make it happen.
Chris Rivera and I are going to do some things
Yeah.
that will go to the real estate investing community. I started the second we got back in San Juan sending you the link to say, hey,
awesome.
I just got back from this. You have to come next year.
I love it.
I've already got 3 or 4 different couples that are like, okay, we're in.
I've heard this quite a few times now. I'm psyched that we inspired everyone to do this. And by the way, you mentioned Christopher Rivera too. So my partners were Captain Lou, who has been running a group cruise for 17 years, which I've spoken on for the last decade. And that really inspired me to create the San Juan Social Club cruise. And then I wanted a local Puerto Rican to be a co-host as well. And I just picked Christopher. I met Christopher actually in Miami at Bitcoin conference years ago. And boy, that's another cool story, but we don't have time to tell it. But and I just immediately felt like he was a brother from another mother. And when I thought about the cruise, I was like, I bet Christopher could do this. And sure enough, he did great. He was so awesome. I'm so happy. He's just such a great guy. I don't know if you know this or not, but back in the heyday of Puerto Rico, when Puerto Rico was sort of the crown jewel of Latin America, Puerto Rico enjoyed the highest number of home ownership in the nation. 68% were homeowners. Let's make that happen again.
Absolutely. I mean, so there's still a high homeowner percentage.
Yes.
And it's very important, right?
Totally.
So, and we lost a lot of homes in the decade leading up to the storm, and then the storm wiped out a bunch. So there's a big need.
Absolutely.
So
there's a deficit.
Pretty cool that we're going to put that joint venture together.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming in and spending the time.
It was great.
We probably went longer than you wanted to, but man,
let's do it another time.
I love it. This was great. Yeah.
Cool.
I could pick your brain all day long.
Vice versa.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching that, and stay tuned to the next one.
See ya.